This video is going to be my reaction to the Lions' 42-29 win over the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. This one had it all. I'm not sure that my reaction video here is really going to be able to do it justice, to be honest with you. Both teams came in with injuries, particularly on the defensive side. I think the offenses came in with brilliant strategies, respectively, trying to attack or exploit the weaknesses that the injuries and the players who were out on each defense kind of opened up. The Seahawks had a lot of hurry up early in the first half I thought to try to throw the football with the Lions missing two of their defensive end outside linebacker guys in Davenport and Barnes, and then their best defensive back overall, obviously, in Brian Branch. Meanwhile, the Seahawks on the other side defensively, they're without Boye Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu, I think, has been out since week one, Leonard Williams, a few others dealing with injuries and were questionable. And the Lions did a great job, if you ask me, of running the football at them, setting up the play-action pass. These two defenses were stressed to the limit. If you ask me, you kind of get an indication of that because I think there were 128 offensive plays run throughout the course of 60 minutes. Pretty incredible in terms of a plays per minute ratio over a 60-minute football game. Additional to that, the Lions had 9 defensive penalties called on them. They did close the game with Kirby Joseph's interception, his third interception of the season in the end zone. So Seattle could have scored again. That's pretty obvious. They were right down there inside of the 5. This one really reminded me of a Big 12 football game. I'm going to let some stats flow through here. It took me a long time to get done with the reaction video because there was so much to try to encompass. So this one may go on a little long, number one, and probably came out too late for some people to catch. A Big 12 game because it has so much offense, so many plays reviewed or questionable situations. Was it a catch? Was it not a catch? Did they get the first down? Just so many plays overall throughout the game that it stressed the defense to the max in terms of their fatigue level. And I thought the Lions defense really got worn down in the third quarter, and that seems to be illustrated by the yards per play that I'll go over a little bit later. You had one quarterback throw the ball almost 60 times, Geno Smith, and throw for almost 400 yards, and the other, Jared Goff, go 19 for 19. The teams combined for 900 yards of offense and 59 first downs, including 38 for the Seahawks. Ridiculous stuff. I think it might be kind of what the NFL wants in terms of game style. Yeah, the Lions offense, focus on that for a moment as the stats flow through. Forgive me if that font is too small. If you're on your phone, perhaps it is, but the Lions didn't turn the football over. I guess the safety doesn't count. Really poor decision at that moment by Detroit's coaching staff, if you ask me, where you're just trying to make things more complicated than they really need to be. But overall, averaged 7.8 yards per play on the night. Yes, Seattle was missing some guys up front. So was Detroit defensively. Goff averaged 12.4 yards per pass. Now that's augmented by Jamison Williams' 70-yard touchdown catch and run that put him up 35-20 late in the third quarter. But look, Seattle just refused to go away. I don't know about you. I felt like I could sense that in the second quarter at some point. Seattle's hurry-up offensive strategy, well, hurry up and wait almost. Line up, look at what the Lions line up in, then look over to the sideline. Very much reminded me of college offenses where sometimes they would then go to a new formation. I actually wonder if the first formation the Seahawks showed tonight was often a dummy formation, meaning it was just to prohibit the Lions from substituting. I believe the Lions in their current configuration on defense have to substitute depending on situation because of the loss of Derek Barnes, who's very versatile. Davenport as well, who's a pass rusher, guy who can kick down to the inside in third and 8 obvious passing situations. I think the Lions are in a situation where they're playing a lot of substitution defense, and the Seahawks prevented them from doing so. In my opinion, it's possible they had a lot of dummy formations first that they lined up in, only to look over to the sideline, get the actual call, and then line up in the formation that they actually wanted to use in the first place. The difference there for me would be college teams, or high school for that matter, lining up in a formation, looking over at the sideline, and then running the intended play from the same formation they lined up in. I don't think that the Seahawks really intended to run any plays at all from those first formations they lined up in a lot of situations tonight. It was a fun game to watch from a competition standpoint, from the differential in style, the short passing game that Geno Smith utilized, dealing with the third-string right tackle being out there, understandable. But I didn't think that Detroit got a ton of pressure on him throughout the game. There were moments, of course, where the pocket was collapsing. Geno Smith escaped a handful of times. There were some holds called. I think there was one or two that maybe weren't called. But the difference in style was pretty apparent. Credit to the Seahawks, because they have Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet. They got nothing done running the football in the first half, 6 yards. And there was almost this inversion at times in the second half where the Seahawks were able to get things accomplished in the third quarter with the run game. And Detroit went to the play-action pass, like I said, illustrated by Jamison Williams' 70-yard touchdown on a play-action concept from left to right. I would say there is something to say about this game in terms of the imbalance of what wide receivers are generally allowed to do when the ball's in the air versus DBs. If you look at Carlton Davis III's near interception in the end zone late, if you reverse that roles there and you have a wide receiver with inside leverage and a DB draped all over him, I think they call that every time. And my perspective in talking about that is as a defensive coach. I don't give a shit what jersey number, or jersey color, I should say, is being worn. I think the imbalance is clear there in what offensive players are allowed to do in those situations that defensive players would not be. Nonetheless, you have to give Geno Smith a lot of credit. I think DK finished with 7 catches for 104 yards. Now, that does include like a 24 or 29 yard or something like that late in the fourth quarter when the Lions are playing soft coverage. This one was crazy to watch, and you'll see that in a little bit when I show you some possessions. I couldn't chart all the info. When I'm watching a college football game nowadays and I try to chart it, I can't get all the information down. In the NFL, I can. So when I say the Seahawks were running a college-style offense, it's certainly not meant to be derogatory. I'm explaining to you that my own experience going from the NFL, charting NFL games to charting college games, I can't get all the information down. To go a step further, when I chart high school games, I can get every single piece of information down that I want if I'm the only person there doing it. If I have a second individual to chart the game, like if you're scouting, then it's relatively easy. I needed a second person tonight to try to get the information down because of how the Seahawks were doing it. And when you see the possession videos, possession play-by-play breakdown, I think you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. They were playing at a fast pace, intelligent move by their coaching staff, if you ask me. I thought Geno made a lot of quick decisions early. He finished 38 of 56, I think, 38 of 57, 395, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Played really tough, if you ask me. Things looked really clear for him in terms of the pre-snap picture and then what the coverage ended up being post-snap. He had a bead on what the Lions defense was doing from the beginning, and there's something to be said about that if you're a Lions fan, because that reminded me of Matt Stafford in week 1. A lot of quick throws, a lot of quick decisions. You can really only do that if you know what the coverage is pre-snap and post-snap. The post-snap immediate picture confirms for you what it is, and you throw the football. And to me, what Geno Smith did tonight is very similar to what Matt Stafford did in week 1. If that sounds like a criticism of the Lions defense, it is. Goff, on the other side, like I said, 19 for 19. Think about the last 2 weeks for Jared Goff. He is 37 of 42 passing in wins over the Seahawks and then the Cardinals a week ago. Additional to that, this Lions offense has scored 9 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, 8 of which are on drives of 70 yards or more, if I did my research right. Now, look, most touchdowns in the NFL this season are of the 70-yard variety because we still are looking at a majority of the kickoffs that are in the end zone. A ridiculous dynamic kickoff that isn't, in fact, dynamic. I don't know why people didn't recognize when the rules were announced that teams were just going to kick it in the end zone and play defense from the negative 30. In any case, Goff was in control early and often, and I thought the Seahawks were able to get pressure at times in the first and second quarter. Goff was able to navigate the pocket and get the ball to the right guy. He was a facilitator, clearly, on the night, but oftentimes the first read wasn't there. So he would get back there, either there was pressure or the first read wasn't there, and he'd have to go the second read. Perhaps even sometimes the third read. Won't know until the end zone and all 22 film comes out tomorrow. I'll be doing a shit ton of film study videos about this one because there's just so much to talk about, so many plays, particularly on One Play Wednesday. I think I'll have fun with that. But this makes this game more interesting from Goff, if you ask me, because the critique and reputation for him is he crumbles under pressure or he struggles with pressure. Let's do it that way. He's 19 of 19 on a night when the Seahawks did actually move him off his initial spot. He'd have to resituate in the pocket, or move him off his additional read. And then, of course, he adds a touchdown catch on the design throwback from Amon-Ra St. Brown. That one put the Lions up 28-14 halfway through the third quarter. Look, at that time in the third quarter, whether you're a Seahawks fan or a Lions fan, you have to admit Seattle was absolutely rolling offensively, attacking Detroit's defense. 3 touchdowns to open the second half. I'll review 2 of them here in a moment, but I want to briefly talk about them. The first possession of the third quarter for Seattle, 10 plays, 70 yards. If you recall, it's the drive capped by the touchdown to the rookie tight end. I think it's Barner on a design play on the right hash into the boundary. They actually ran the same exact play later on in the fourth quarter. So 10 plays, 70 yards. The next one, after Detroit scores, by the way, 8 plays, 80 yards. Kenneth Walker III gets in from 1 yard out to get within 28-20. And we're talking about, I think, 3 minutes left in the third quarter. Then a ridiculous decision by Seattle's coaching staff. If there's 8 minutes left or 6 minutes left and you need one stop, fine, I understand. But there's too many variables. I have never seen it work out. Let's just do it this way. And you may say, well, if that's anecdotal, you're only one person. I have charted over 25 NFL football games each season since late 2019. But let's just do 2020. So 20, 21, 22, 23 seasons, completely charted 25 games or more. And I actually went back and checked in those 4 seasons. The number's 107 overall. Now, through 4 weeks this season, I've charted Ravens, Lions, and Seahawks games. I've never seen that strategy work out once. So I understand people are going to say, well, the data or the projections, the quote analytics, tell you to go for it. And then maybe it's 28-22, and now you have the edge with a potential touchdown and extra point, putting you up by 1. I've never seen it work out. And just so you know, coaches 30, 40 years ago had all this figured into their decisions already. This is not a new way of thinking. It's just a new way to be wrong. I digressed there for a moment, so forgive me. That short touchdown run by Walker cut it to 28-20. The Lions answer immediately on the St. Brown. The Lions answer on the next drive on the St. Brown to Goff touchdown pass. Goff had also found Jameson Williams in stride. It becomes a 35-20 edge late in the third quarter. At that point, 27 points scored by the offenses in the third quarter. I thought both defenses were gassed or just not able to keep up. Again, reminded me of the Big 12. So it's 35-20 Lions. All the Seahawks do is go 70 yards in 7 plays. Chunk opportunities. 23-yard run by Kenneth Walker III. Then the big screen to Laviska Shenault for 18. I'd like to see him get on the field more, but I understand the Seahawks have so much talent on offense. Walker eventually took a toss play on the second play of the fourth quarter, cut it all the way back across the field, left to right, for a touchdown to move it to within 35-27. Just a crazy quarter. When you think about what Seattle did on offense, yes, Detroit did score on a one-play drive to Jameson Williams and then also scored on their previous possession. Seattle's offense was just efficient and grinding them down. 25 plays in the quarter. I'm including the first 2 plays of the fourth quarter here as well. 25 plays, 220 yards of offense on 3 possessions, almost 9 yards per play from the third quarter into the early fourth. And then somehow these two defenses, I should say, figured out how to exchange stops. Seattle got a nice stop. Their interior run defense held up. They brought down David Montgomery on a loss, a 3rd-and-1 loss on a toss play. The Seahawks' ensuing drive reached, I think, midfield. They had a penalty, 2 penalties, in fact. First was a hold on DK Metcalf, pretty obvious hold if you ask me, on a run by Charbonnet that gained a first down to the right side into the boundary. And then a 4th-and-3 sprint-out concept. Lockett does run into the defensive back. If Lockett, makes it look like he's running a route, they don't call it. So as much as it might not have looked egregious, and I didn't think it looked egregious, the rule set is already heavily in the offense's favor about pick, rub, or shield concepts. If you watch much of my film study breakdowns, you can probably tell by the sound of my voice, it pisses me off as a defensive coach that offenses use it and rely on it so much. If you give the illusion that you're running a route, again, Tyler Lockett, then the completion to JSN where he's wide open would have withstood, and Seattle's working down the field to possibly score again. As it worked out, Seattle's forced to punt from midfield. Thought Detroit kind of closed the show with their passing game. 29 yards on a dig to Tim Patrick, which is a Josh Reynolds route. If you're a Lions fan, you know what I'm talking about. Goff dialed that throw in perfectly. 3 plays later, he had a 30-yard, I think, screen to Laporta up the right side. Got the ball to the Seahawks 10. And then, absent a turnover, things really seemed over. Like I said, Goff finds St. Brown for an 8-yard touchdown pass to return the favor from earlier. Goff had actually had an incompletion a few plays prior, but the refs called an offensive pass interference on Lions tight end Brock Wright, essentially shielding the defender in a somewhat similar fashion to Lockett's penalty a couple of minutes earlier. When the Lions defense bent but got a stop inside the 10 on the ensuing possession, definitely thought that the game was over at that point. 42-27 at that point. Again, one of the plays is where Carlton Davis III had inside position. There's no call. Do I think they should call it on DK Metcalf? No, I actually don't. I think he's legitimately trying to get to the football. I'm fine with no call there. But there's no way if the roles aren't reversed and a receiver has inside position that they don't call it on the defensive back. That was a good matchup throughout the game. DK Metcalf obviously had the advantage. I thought Aaron Glenn left Carlton Davis III out to dry multiple times. Just, you can't be that obvious that it's man when you're dealing with a guy like DK Metcalf and a quarterback who makes intelligent decisions, is accurate in Geno Smith, and has a cannon for an arm and can get the ball out there quick. DK finished 7 catches for 104, but it took 12 targets to get there. He's off to a ridiculous start to the season. I think he has 24 catches at this point, 360-plus yards through 4 games. Freak of all freaks out there at wide receiver. He's headed towards a great year in this offense regardless. But if teams give him the coverages that Aaron Glenn showed and revealed early, like this game, then he's going to have an even bigger season. Before we get to some possession breakdowns, I always like to talk about the first half. So my notes for the first half, the Lions were able to control possession twice in the first half. They finished with a 21-7 lead, obviously. The big play was the turnover. I think Jack Campbell dislodged the football on DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf had 5 catches for 73 yards on 8 targets in the first half. Lions, these are my notes that I'm reading out. The Lions are willing to play a lot of man and show it to the Seahawks, meaning there's a lot of hurry up, revealing the coverage and the alignment early, giving Geno Smith and the Seahawks coaching staff time to see it, getting lined up early. Basically, they were able to change their call and have the chalk last, if you will. I thought it was a nice strategy by the Seahawks, even though at the half they only had 7 points to show for it. We all know what happened in the third quarter. I just summarized it before a moment ago. They were unable to get anything generated in the run game. 6 yards of rushing in the first half from running backs, all Kenneth Walker. And then for the crazy thing is it flipped. By the end of the game, the Seahawks actually outrushed the Lions overall. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. The Seahawks finished with 133 yards on the ground. Detroit finished with 116. I think Detroit's were a little bit more efficient and less reliant on the quarterback scrambling, obviously. In the first half, despite being down 21-7, Seattle had outgained the Lions 177-158. Geno Smith 17 of 24. I think Goff was 12 for 12. I can't prove this, but I think there are some real predictable indicators for the Lions' coverages. I'll try to prove it this week in a film study video. It lines up perfectly, if you accept my theory here, with what Matt Stafford did in week 1. You as a quarterback, you can't make quick throws and complete at such a high percentage if you don't know the coverage. Post-snap, you see something that immediately confirms it. Bang, throw the football, complete. That seemed to be the dynamic tonight, similar to week 1 in my opinion. Didn't exist last week against the Cardinals, however, so take it for what it's worth. I can't figure that out in live time. It's just a theory that I was able to come up with. Like I said, as good as Geno was in the first half, 17 of 24, Goff was probably better. 12 of 12, only 92 yards, but him getting to his second or third read, while his feet had been moved, I thought was pretty cool. It kind of goes against what people say about Goff. The Lions' insistence defensively on man had perturbed me somewhat at halftime. You can ask some of the guys that are in our Lions Discord, and that was something I mentioned. You can't continue to play these coverages against DK Metcalf and get away with it. When it's one-on-one and Geno knows the coverage, you're just making things too simple for the offense. You got to make them work a little bit harder. To go a little bit further with the Lions defense, on one play in the first half, they had 12 players on the field, and on another, the announcers indicated they had 10. Now, I can't prove that, but that's what Joe Buck said. Only 1 sack in the first half for the Lions. My notes said, can the Seahawks get some run game to retain some balance? in the second half. The run game plays were kind of, to be honest with you, kind of anomalous or by design, but they worked in a lot of ways and allowed the Seahawks to pick up chunk plays. Let's review some possessions here from the third into the fourth quarter. Talk about the Seahawks' sixth possession to open the third quarter down 21-7. The big one is the completion to Fant on a 2nd and 4 from the 46. It's down near the bottom of the screen. It's a 16-yard completion up the left sideline. They went a lot of hurry up here. I had 11 personnel on a couple of these, but I was not sure exactly. Sometimes when Jake Bobo is lined up close to one of the other tight ends, basically close to the right tackle or left tackle, I'm like, is that a tight end or not when it's the far side of the screen? Don't necessarily get a replay often. 4th and 1, Geno Smith had converted. 4th play down from the top. The 3rd and 8 from a Lions perspective is maddening. I think it's the 7th play from the top. 3rd and 8 from the negative 38-yard line, 11 personnel. DK Metcalf on a drag from the X position. Ran the same exact route against the Patriots once. Ran the same exact route in week 1 from the same exact side of the field. Lions played really soft coverage on that one. Gave that up to DK Metcalf too easily. Can't let him get... It's a design play. Basically, they're blocking from the trip side. DK's able to get out of bounds for 9 yards. Walker with a one-man screen. Then the big completion to Fant up the left hash. Eventually, really nicely designed play. Play action boot into the boundary out of 12 personnel on the 1st and goal from the 9. And Barner, hopefully I spelled his name and I'm saying it correctly, is wide open for a 9-yard touchdown. The Lions have had difficulty against these concepts for years, even dating back to their loss at home to the Seahawks in 2022. I remember that game, whereby there's play action, flow, with the running back to one side, and then a crosser underneath from the side where the flow originated to in the opposite direction. And it happened to multiple guys tonight. It happened to Amik Robertson once, happened to Alex Angeloni once, who has been very inconsistent with that technique in the last 2 or 3 years. So that one pulled Seahawks to within 21-14. I'll actually display the Lions' 6th and 7th possessions here. The top one, the 6th possession, matches that previous touchdown that we just described. It happened quick. A brutal play that I think shows you a lot about David Montgomery and Devin Witherspoon. Witherspoon gets basically run over by Montgomery on a completed pass, first play of the drive, 1st and 10 from the negative 30. I missed the formation. The Fox broadcast, I didn't think showed it quick enough for me to document it. Witherspoon gets knocked down. Montgomery reverses field. I think it's Witherspoon who ends up making the tackle or influencing Montgomery to get out of bounds on the far left side of the field. I could be wrong there, but I thought he got up and got involved in it, which is unbelievable to me. It just tells you about him. Number one, from a tenacity standpoint. In terms of size, though, dealing with David Montgomery, he's got to go low. There's just no way to get him down in that situation. 40-yard gain, pretty unbelievable. 2 plays later, 23-yard completion to Patrick. I didn't think that Tim Patrick's foot speed looked very impressive tonight. I understand people might call him slow. Number one, for the injuries that he suffered 2 years in a row, I'm glad to see him back in the league. I think he's a really good fit for the Lions. I really do. Is he going to give the Lions what Josh Reynolds did in terms of statistical output? No, not with consistency, not the total number of catches. Can he give you 70 to 80% of what Josh Reynolds did? I think the gameplay tonight kind of reveals that the answer to that is yes, but we may have a different opinion. 2 plays after that, 2nd and goal from the 7 is the trick play. Goff looked really smooth with it, and he looked like he was playing it off when the ball was in the air. Or maybe that's just Goff's deadpan style. He didn't want to give it away to number 50. I think it's Gibson, who's not a starter for the Seahawks, obviously. Tariq Woolen, is also over there on that side of the field. And you can't blame anyone for flowing with St. Brown on what looks like a reverse. Why? Because the Lions had run reverses the last 2 weeks. And they've been quite effective with different players. Khalif Raymond and then Jamison Williams. The reverse has actually been really effective. I'll do a one play Wednesday video on this trick play and kind of link it to the reverses. Really showed the reverse look to the defense. St. Brown, nice pass. Goff, really smooth 7-yard touchdown catch. 28-14. I'm skipping a Seahawks possession where they're able to close to 28-20, the one that I described earlier, where they went for the 2-point conversion, didn't get it. Lions answer right back on their 7th possession, 70-yard touchdown to Jamison Williams. He dunks it, and that draws the penalty. Okay, fine. How come it's not a penalty for him celebrating from the 25? Like, I just feel like the NFL officiating and rules is so incredibly inconsistent. I guess the difference is you can run and jump into the stands and celebrate, but you can't dunk anymore. I'm not sure what the difference is. They're both celebrating. If I'm coaching someone, I don't want them doing either one. Me personally, I'm not personally involved with any of these dudes out here, so I don't really necessarily understand the difference in the rules there. But nonetheless, that one put the Lions up 35-20. No one in their right mind that's a Lions fan or a Seahawks fan thought the game was over. You guys told me all week when I did film study preview and videos and such that this was going to be a crazy high-scoring game, and I didn't believe it. I really did not. Even with the defensive guys being out for both teams, I thought they're good enough quality defenses that we're still going to be looking at 27-21. Nope. I'm glad I didn't do a prediction for a score because concrete prediction, that is, because I was way off. In any case, here we are, late third quarter, where the Seahawks cut it to 35-27. This is actually the second play of the fourth quarter when Walker scores. I think it's Neiman or Newman. I may have his name spelled wrong there. 2nd and 10 from the 21-yard line. Last play at the bottom. Ends up being a 21-yard reverse field toss to Walker. Neiman kind of stacked there into a 4-3 look, and I don't know what the Lions do at this point. Missing Barnes. Anzalone looked, let's just say he did not look his best tonight. I'll put it that way. I thought the Seahawks attacked him in pass to the boundary often, and Anzalone has generally been a really good pass defender in coverage, in my opinion. He's one of my favorite guys from the inside linebacker position to watch in coverage. Tonight, I did not think was a really good night for him. Earlier in the drive, there had been a 7-yard screen to Walker and then a 23-yard run on a weird sweep play to him where I think a couple of these times the Seahawks have 2 running backs on the field, Walker and Charbonnet. So almost kind of telling you what's coming from the standpoint of they never do that. And on the 2 times that I have it tonight documented, both of those times were run plays to Kenneth Walker III. In any case, this one cuts it to 35-27. Defenses are somehow able to get a pair of stops. And then the Lions, for all intents and purposes, I guess, did actually put the game away. Their 9th possession here, beginning with about 9 minutes left in the game, already up 35-27. Ends up being the wide-open touchdown pass to St. Brown on a 3rd and goal from the 8. I guess a field goal could have still got the job done from a final score standpoint, but as a Lions fan, you needed some mental security. You needed some separation numerically, statistically, that said, this game is over. And like I said, for all intents and purposes, it was. I really love the throw to Patrick on the first play of this drive. 29-yard completion from the negative 20-yard line. Really gutsy by Ben Johnson, if you ask me. The Seahawks were trying. They had just had 2 stops earlier in the third quarter, in the second half, excuse me. So credit to Ben Johnson for coming out and being able to throw the football, being willing to throw the football. Laporta ends up being the target on a 1st and goal from the 10. It's the 5th play down for you guys. That's the offensive pass interference called on Brock Wright. The very next play is a pinpull pitch to Gibbs for 8 yards on a 1st and goal from the 20. Gibbs up the middle for 4. Doesn't really get much. So you have a 3rd and goal from the 8. At that point, I don't know about you, I'm thinking, how do they get this ball in the end zone? They're certainly not going to run it. Even Ben Johnson isn't going to run it on 3rd and goal from the 8. And he finds St. Brown. Goff finds St. Brown left side of the end zone for an 8-yard touchdown that really caps it off. Crazy football game. It only got even crazier with the safety. Like I said earlier, I thought that was a poor decision by Ben Johnson. I have no trouble saying that. I understand that people may disagree. But I often look at how did it work out? How did it actually work out? Because we're oftentimes told by analytics and data that things could work out this way, but I rarely see that they do. In any case, for the Lions, they get a much-needed bye this week coming up to get key players healthy. I don't think Laporta looks as explosive to me as he did last year when he's running routes or running with the football. I don't really want to say slow. There just doesn't seem to be as much burst right now. Could be the ankle, what have you. Branch, I think, is a potential all-pro safety at this point, was out concussion protocol and then an illness. Starting center Frank Ragnow. I don't know how the Lions handle the other defensive end outside linebacker position. I can't sit here and say that even as a huge fan of his, I have any faith in James Houston IV based on what I saw tonight. I didn't think other guys responded well either. I think the Lions have got to get something done there. In order to increase the ceiling of this defense, I think they got to get something done over there. I'm talking about outside the building. For the Seahawks, unfortunately, they don't get a bye. They will rest until Sunday and then play 2 games in the span of 4 days, which is very difficult to imagine with the status of their health. First, they get the Giants at home next Sunday, and then division rival 49ers on Thursday Night Football, a game that I'll try to cover. It's a brutal stretch, for real, given their injury situation. Luckily, they're I shouldn't say luckily. Fortunately, they're 3-1, but playing without Boye Mafe, Leonard Williams, Uchenna Nwosu had already been out for a while. Others were, I guess, questionable throughout the week and were able to play against the Lions. I thought they came in with a great game plan on offense. I'm not sure that the Seahawks, had a lot of options on defense. Maybe they could have been more aggressive with blitzes and tried to stop or slow down the run game, but then you open yourself up to bigger pass plays if Goff keeps it. I thought this was a fun game to watch, a challenging game for me to try to summarize and encompass for you guys. Forgive me that it took so long to A, produce the video, and B, that it ended up being a 30-minute reaction video. I had a lot to say about it. It was very interesting, probably stretched the limits of my capability in terms of charting the plays and understanding and being able to see what occurred. I did have to rewind the game 3 different times on the stream that I was watching because I kind of missed the play while I was documenting on my other screen. So feel free to give me some feedback on the style of reaction video that I generally do and how you think this fits with the reaction videos I normally produce. I think I was operating at a deficit here. Felt like I was going on a 10-degree incline, trying to climb uphill while carrying a rock on my back because the Seahawks offensive style tonight pushed me to the limit in keeping up with the documentation. And so I can only transfer that to the Lions defense. I think the Lions defense was stressed to the max. And I don't want to say broke, but they definitely gassed in the third quarter from the standpoint of being able to keep up. I think that follows. You can see that illustrated by the statistics. 25 plays for 220 yards and 3 touchdowns on 3 consecutive possessions to stay close and really probably put a scare into Lions fans that were, hoping to be able to get an easy fourth quarter out of it when they're up 35-20. In any case, you guys let me know what you think of the reaction video that I did, the review of the gameplay, and some of the plays that I chose to illustrate and talk about. If you think that other Lions fans or other Seahawks fans, for that matter, would enjoy my thoughts on the game, please consider grabbing a link to this video and sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach. If you have suggestions for film study videos for this week, I'd like to hear them in the comments section. Appreciate you guys' time.